Pierre, thank you so much for a fascinating insight, and we are very, very happy to have a very dynamic panel of industry experts and also real-time live travelers who have experienced all of this and will be able to share with us their wholehearted experience. So thank you to my esteemed panel. Firstly, you all know who I am. I'm not going to bother introducing myself, even though I love the sound of my own voice. Let the panel speak first. They're going to introduce themselves, their name, and just a sentence as to what it is that is relevant for this panel. Taras.
Hello, my name is Taras. I'm the final year student in computer science degree, and I'm a millennial. Yeah.
Our millennial, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, I'm Rob. I work for Emirates doing industry change, which effectively means what do we need to do as an industry to be different, and I'm passionately believing that things have to be different.
Hello there, my name is Vicky Scherber. I'm from Lufthansa, working on behalf of Lufthansa Swiss and Austrian for all passenger and baggage processes, so the customer experience at the airport.
Good afternoon, everyone. John Glick. I'm a partner at PwC. I spend my time focusing on studying customer experience, customer behavior, and loyalty in the travel space.
Hi, I'm Nick Green. It's my team that are actually putting off this event, and we run the survey, so we're interested in that for obvious reasons.
Joanna, please.
Hello, my name is Joanna. I'm from Fundacja Pies Przewodnik, Guide Dog Foundation, which supports blind people, for example, trains guide dogs, and I'm here with my guide dog.
And of course, Bunya, thank you so much, also must introduce as well, such a lovely, well-behaved animal as well. So as you can see, we've got a mixture of people who are industry experts, who deal with the whole passenger experience, with loyalty programs, with baggage handling, with everything that goes with that whole passenger experience, and also we have passengers as well, myself included. So we've got, Pierre brought to us the results of the survey, and we'll look at the different themes that have come through it. The first one that I was particularly surprised at was passenger satisfaction. Happy passengers, if we can bring up that slide to show the results, because we've seen that for the past 3 years, passenger satisfaction has been really quite high, and I was surprised to see that personally. So I'm just going to let my two travelers answer whether this is the case. Taras, what is your experience? Because are you as satisfied as the survey results suggest?
Actually, I'm kind of satisfied, but I'm really disappointed of the unexpected delays, and the delays which could be delayed for 1 hour and then for 3 hour. And I had one time I was waiting in the airport for 3 hours, and then the race was delayed. So, but overall, I'm satisfied from what I get from the airlines.
Overall, you feel quite content.
Completely.
Joanna, your experience, because again, this survey is suggesting that if 75% of people are feeling, generally okay about things, that seems pretty high. What's your experience?
My experience is both positive and sometimes negative, but there are more positive ones, I think. For example, I was positively surprised when I was on board and the flight crew, they showed the oxygen mask to me, and I could feel it with my hands. I was shown how to put it on, and it was really clear and nice for me, because I've never seen the oxygen mask, and I imagined it in a quite different way. And another very positive thing was the safety instruction in Braille, which I was given once. The negative thing was when I got off the airplane, and the support people took us, blind people, because there was a group of blind people. They took us to the special car, and they separated us from our guides, from our friends. And I think blind people do not need any special transportation or wheelchairs. They need just being guided in a right way.
Joanna, thank you. That's a really, really deep and a personal experience. Thank you for sharing it with us. So you can hear there are pluses and there are negatives as well. So let's put some of this to the industry insiders who are responsible for all of this, and also to the audience. You've got the opportunity to use Slido. I'm sure you're all far more tech savvy than I am. You can ask questions. I've got a machine here, which I'm trying not to break, where I can pick up your questions and also put them to the panel. So do feel free to get involved. This is going to be as active as possible. So just when we look at this level of satisfaction, we're seeing that it is consistent. People who are sort of generally okay about things. Nick, is the industry, it sort of feels like it's kind of sitting on its laurels a little bit, that, you know, you're doing all right, you're getting a good feedback, and you're not improving?
Well, I mean, you could look at this half full or half empty. You can also say that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 are not pleased with what they're receiving, but overall it shouldn't be a surprise to see that we're around 75%. There's been a lot of innovation. One thing you can count on with this industry is that there's never a dull moment in terms of trying to find a better way of doing business. And so when you look at the last 10 years from what we used to do and what's been automated above the wing, or even in the airports from restaurants and shops and all this stuff. I mean, there's only a decade ago this stuff wasn't even there. So yeah, there's a lot of good things that airlines have, and the airports and the entire industry is invested in to keep it to where it is. The problem is that it actually has plateaued. And when we look at the things that were in this results from the survey, they're the same things that we've had year after year after year after year that aren't getting improved upon. The hard specs, like we mentioned this morning. And if we don't start to get this right, then this number is going to start going in the opposite direction. And then we're going to have some real problems. And it's an opportunity, too, for airlines in the room. The ones that get it right are the ones that are going to win in the end. And that's where we are.
I see what you mean. And so, Vicky, why is the industry not just really getting it so perfectly spot on? Because as Nick was saying, it's not like it hasn't been around. We're hearing the same complaints all the time. What are you guys not doing here?
I think you're not in a stable situation. I think we have improved in many ways, but also the expectation of the passenger has risen at the same time. So it's like always playing catch up. I mean, maybe 10 years ago it was okay to wait half an hour at check-in. 5 years ago it was 15 minutes. And now we're down to 3 minutes. And how do you cope? How do you catch up with the expectation that's there?
So is it the passenger's fault that we expected too much?
No. I mean, I'm also a passenger when I travel, so I also look at everything from a passenger's point of view. It just tells us we have to keep up the speed and keep improving. I personally was surprised. I would have expected lower results here because of, at least in Europe, the situation we had last summer with so many disruptions. And I mean, here also half of the passengers mentioned that they were confronted with a disruption, and especially in a disruption, you can really make up with a good process or with a good product, or you can really scare people away when you don't deliver there. So I think for the normal situation, I think we have improved, and I think we're going the right way. When it comes to disruptions, there's still room for improvement and to really cope with the expectation of our passengers.
John, you understand, you focus on loyalty. How damaging is it when you don't get things right for customer loyalty for a company?
Yeah, so that's a big thing that we actually study, which is how long do those negative experiences stay in the customer's mind versus a positive experience? And it's really the negative ones that hang around. So you almost have to do twice as much on the good side of things, creating a great customer experience to overcome any negative experience. Negative experiences last about 60% longer. And so, it becomes an interesting piece when you start looking at the different segments, right? So the customers that fly, the infrequent customer that's only flying, every 12 to 18 months, maybe it's not a bad thing. They're going to be more price, they're more price sensitive. They're shopping around anyway. It's really going to be about the ones, your most loyal, your highest value customers that you want to make sure that you recover.
That you absolutely nail those. We've got a question from an anonymous, someone anonymous. Rob, I'm going to put this to you. Is there anything that the aviation industry can learn from other transport companies when it comes to dealing with passengers with reduced mobility, for example?
I think we are just actually, I think as an industry, need to embark to be different. Right now we have been focusing on, oh, you're blind or something. We put you in a wheelchair and we drive you around. Well, as she was already saying, we should actually say, what's your ability? And focus on what people can do. See, blind people, as I say, as they're part of a group, they're perfectly happy to handle themselves. Give them a good wayfinding application in Braille or in audio, and they can find their own ways around. Same thing with people in a wheelchair. I mean, like we in a couple of weeks' time have an athletics championship in Dubai for Paralympics, and we're just looking at start saying is, instead of giving the people in a wheelchair and push them around, give an athletic a wheelchair, and they drive themselves through the airport 2 times faster than I can walk. So we actually don't need to treat them based on their disability, but focus on what their ability is, and that makes it much better.
Joanna, what do you find the most frustrating then when you embark on a journey? What is it that you sort of think, oh goodness, they've got to get that right?
For me, it was a bit frustrating when I was forced to sit in wheelchair. I do have mobility issue, but that's not so very big problem. I can walk, and I can even show how to guide me in a proper way. Generally speaking, blind person should always be preceded by the sighted person, and that's the clue. That's the safest way of guiding blind person. Blind person holds one's elbow, and it's a very safe way. And I think another frustrating thing for me was when I was at the check-in, and the person in a check-in spoke not to me, but to my guide, to my friend, to my assistant. She spoke as if I wasn't there. So to say, just sometimes people speak next to blind people, as if blind people were not present, and as if blind people couldn't hear, couldn't understand. I know what's the problem, because sighted people think, oh, probably they can't hear, they can't understand, because there is no eye contact, and that's not a problem. Just speak to blind people, not to our guides, to our friends.
Joanna, thank you. That's a relatively recent experience, I'm assuming, Joanna. Yes.
Excuse me, could you repeat?
Was that a recent experience? To było niedawno chyba.
I think it was last year.
Last year, so very recent. So that's shocking, actually. That shouldn't be like that.
Sorry.
Yes, absolutely, Rob.
I actually would challenge people, anybody in the audience here, put on a blindfold, get somebody to help you through it, and actually get yourself through the check-in process all the way down to the gate, even if you're not flying. Most of us have an airport pass to get through the process, and just actually experience it. I tried it once.
Really?
And it was actually an eye-opener. I mean, of course, everybody looked at it as a bit strange down there because they know me of walking around on the airport, but it's just see it yourself, experience yourself what it actually is. Same with a wheelchair. Just once in a while, let you be driven around in the airport to a wheelchair, you look at it completely different.
Yes, that's a good idea, actually. That's a good idea. Let's see how many industry specialists will bring that in to get their employees to do that. Let's talk about the touch points then, the passenger satisfaction within various different touch points, because we heard how it feels like when you've got control over something, the passenger feels much, much happier. And Taras, I'm assuming that you feel the same when you are in control, especially somebody of your generation, much younger than me. I've just underlined that, thanks. You're happier when you are on top of things. Is that right?
Yeah, 100% sure. I want to be up to date with all the flight changes. I want to receive the notification immediately if something has changed. I want to see that my mobile app, for example, is the source of truth, because sometimes it happens like the TV in the airport shows completely different information than mobile app, and I want to just click my phone, check, all right, I know where to go, at what time, and yeah, for sure.
So why are because we heard this again earlier this morning, that we've got different information points coming from different information on the same thing, but coming from different sources. Why can we not bring it all together, Nick?
Because everybody's treating their information as proprietary, and as a result, we're not sharing it. And that's in every single process that exists right here on this slide. And until we can start to get to one source of truth, which is very difficult to do, we're still going to be spinning our wheels on this particular item. It really is about sharing of information. We're just not where we need to be in terms of that. And who is going to be the one that owns that data to be able to make sure that the customer gets what they need? Because everybody treats the customer separately. The airport look at them as their own customers as well. The airlines look at it, their customers, the airports are looking at them, their customers, and obviously the border control and security aren't looking at them as customers, they're just looking at it as numbers, and even those aren't sharing information either. So it really is about having a trusted source. One ID will probably get us there, but it's going to take a long time before that happens.
So why are different parts of the industry, different companies, Vicky, not talking to each other?
I mean, I think when it comes to the ecosystem at your hub, I think there is a good exchange between the home carrier and the hub and the partners around. When it then comes to outstations where another carrier is the home carrier, then you may have some competitive topics that you don't want to get into. But I think all the airlines see the value in sharing data and providing data, especially when it comes to resource planning for the handling agent, for the airport, for the touch points that the passengers go through. I would assume that maybe sometimes the airlines have different capabilities, the airport have different capabilities, and then if 5 airlines can give you the data and 550 cannot, how does the airport then take the source or doesn't use the data? I think we're just on very different levels, and we need to get them all up at the same time to really use the data and make value out of it.
You want to come in on this, Rob?
Yeah. We actually, as an industry, have recognized that this is a problem. Take flight status. So we actually, under the travel board, which met yesterday, and Vicky and myself are a part of that, where we have actually started saying we want a consistent way that there's one source of truth and everybody can subscribe to it. So it doesn't matter whether you're on the airport app, look at the screens, use FlightAware, or whatever you use, you should be able to get the exact same information about the flight within seconds. So that's why we're now working on a consistent way so that Lufthansa in Dubai and we in Frankfurt can actually have the same type of experience across. That's something which is now starting. Will take a little time before we get there, but hopefully in a year or two from now, that this discussion should be there.
A year or two?
Yeah.
It sounds so easy, single source of truth. When I looked at our systems internally, even within the Lufthansa group, we have like 2 or 3 sources of truth. Mm-hmm. So if I compare internal systems, I see different times. Yeah. And then the airport has their own logic.
Flight forecasting is still a manual process.
So it really sounds easy, but you have a lot of legacy systems, and they have some connections to different systems. So to really get this up to speed is a problem. And in Lufthansa, we discussed just half a year ago, do we send out information to our passengers immediately when we know of the change, or do we give our own staff and the handling agent 5 minutes lead time? Because when you communicate the flight is canceled at a gate, then everyone rushes to the gate agent and says, I need a solution. And we had previously, I think it was 8 minutes lead time for the handling agent to be able to prepare. And then we said we cut this 8 minutes because the passenger will know through other sources anyhow that the flight is canceled. It's not just through our app where we can steer the information. So how do we make sure that this crew, the staff, can then also deliver once it's real time known to the customer?
So what is your lead time now? Do you
zero. We cut it down to 0. So don't be surprised if you're better informed than our staff.
So it's also up to passengers also to understand that they need to be patient as well.
Well, I'm sure if you did a show of hands, probably half of this room have told an agent that their flight's delayed.
Yeah.
John, just going to you, we've got a question from the floor, which I think would be good for you. How important is the physical product, the environment, versus the service experience when it comes to driving a positive passenger experience in general?
Yeah, I think they all work together. I think they work hand in hand, right? I mean, if we think about what this industry is about, it's about connecting humanity, right? And it's about getting you from point A to point B first and foremost safely, right? And then everything else there is gravy. I think if we look at consumer trends and people are just more, they expect more today than ever before. And that's not going away, right? I mean, I think somebody said earlier, right, it's a famous quote, like this is the slowest pace of change we'll have, right, is right now. And so with that as the standard baseline, the onboard physical product is going to be important. Comfort and is extremely important to people, but I think it's amazing how far a smile on your face will go, right? I think it's amazing how far transparency of information will go. People want to be empowered. People want to know what's happening. If I have a 3-hour delay, that's terrible. But if you let me know that that's happening ahead of time, I can plan around it, right? And it takes a very negative experience and can turn it into at least a neutral one. So I think they have to go hand in hand, and I think you have to look at it across the journey when it matters most. And I think the other thing is, with the democratization of travel, right? We talked about growing from, we're going to have 8 billion travelers, right, in the future. That just means there's more access to travel across the board than ever before. It's not, sure, there may be some growth on the top side, the frequent travelers, but it's really touching a new segment of customers, right? And at the end of the day, those people, they would just want to get to where they're going. And so they're willing to have a different expectation of what that onboard product should be. But I think, as we've heard, being able to treat everybody as a human, no matter what part of the cabin they're sitting in, is really the important piece.
Taras, if you had one thing that you could absolutely change that would make your life just super, super great, what would it be when it comes to the whole travel experience?
Earplugs inside.
Earplugs.
Yeah. Because, like crying babies, somebody speaking loudly, and like it drives my nuts, But frankly speaking, I think just the possibility to buy fast, just buy and go immediately. Mm-hmm. So the following the track, fast move, hot deals, and the easiness of the processes. So no borders. You could travel everywhere, and I think that would be great for me. That have the possibility to travel everywhere.
And it's speed. I can feel with the younger the generation, they just want everything quicker and quicker. I'm sensing. I'm quite happy to sit down and read a book for a bit. But when it comes, say, smart check-ins, how does it work for your ideal check-in experience then? What for you, Taras, has been a positive one, for example?
The positive one. Frankly speaking, I'm using my passport right now. I'm continue using. I'm actually against the face recognition, just because right now I'm not 100% sure that the data which is gathered will be used just for the registration purposes and not for the way more targeted advertisement which will be targeted on me, you know. So that's why I don't want to give my face to somebody else. But I think like
So it's a trust issue then, isn't it? It's you're worried. Nick,
Yeah.
how do you reply? How do you?
Your passport is biometrically enabled, by the way. Your passport is biometrically enabled, right? Already,
no.
with a thumbprint. That's how
No.
you got your
I have just the paper passport right now.
yeah, but the passport in
No,
the
it has no chips inside.
no
Did
chip
you
yet?
actively choose not to have a chip? Or?
It was in 2015, and at this time I've chosen
haven't renewed
not to
yet.
do anything with it. So.
When you renew, though, you will. No, I mean, the survey results still indicated that it is something that millennials are not interested in, but guys like me and others in the room want it. I think once you illustrate, because there's a conundrum here, that they want to move through the process faster, but they don't want to surrender the information required to do so. And then if you build it, they will come. So once you illustrate that this works, and we know it works, the problem that's standing in the way is governments, quite frankly. But if you can illustrate that you can use that information, the information is already being shared. Right? If you travel, you have advanced passenger information that's being shared. You have PNR data that's being shared already between governments. And that information could be replaced with something that's more biometrically enabled. And if customers choose to use it, they can. And if customers don't, they don't have to. But the ones that choose to use it will get the benefit of a faster experience. And I think that's how you implement it, and over time, eventually, it just becomes the way we do business.
So just and a point from the floor as well. We've got one, Vicky, I'm going to put this to you because it's airline specific. The security control rules are so different from one airport to the other. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there was given this focus on security screening, immigration and customs control, something that Taras, I know you'd like to just fly through the whole thing without worrying about all those things. Can airlines and also airports, but specifically airlines, what can they do to help governments to facilitate a more seamless process? Because, I mean, this is just such a big, thank you for whoever put that question in, because
I have to laugh a bit at the question, because anyone who traveled through Frankfurt in the last 2 months will see that Lufthansa doesn't have a big influence on speeding up this process. It's currently a real catastrophe to use the security line in Frankfurt. I can only recommend Munich, Zurich, and Vienna. The other partner hubs, because it's a highly regulated area in Germany, it doesn't even sit with the airports, where you also may have a bigger need to optimize it. It's really with the authorities, and I think maybe it's easier in the Middle East, where those authorities are rather interlinked to really have an influence. We've tried for many years. We've supported pilots, supported new technology, but our influence is really limited, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, go on.
But I think that's where the technology actually can help, because I think from an immigration authority, 95% of the passengers, they just want to clear through. They don't care. That means, come down, please spend your money in our country, great. The 5% is what they want, and biometric technology can actually allow them to already in advance to start filtering out all the people which they're not interested to talk to, and even they can say, oh, yes, we know this biometrically is Rob, but we want to speak to him, and the gate will reject me, and get to me personally, based on the data they already collected of me. They know when I traveled, when I booked, how I paid, all that kind of things they know. So that technology is there, and if they actually properly integrate it into the biometric process, which we can work under the One ID umbrella, that can actually be much easier. Similar for security, instead of right now, everybody gets the same process. It should be much more of an ability to say, we have identified you, you traveled 5 times over the last months, you're low risk. Keep your bag in, you're a one-off traveler and your profile looks a bit dodgy, get a higher approach.
Aren't you risking their screening? That's quite dangerous grounds you're
That's
but you do that with TSA pre already. For instance, some of the US processes are already based on frequent people which have given more information, get a lower screen. So it exists, and it is all based behind the scenes on data processing.
It's crazy to put 100% of the people through this process. It's insanity. And the problem is that governments aren't prepared to, there's no politician in the planet that's going to come out and support something that looks like we're reducing security. And that's the problem. Because ultimately, we should be, it's not profiling is not the word, but we have all this information available to us. The fact that we don't have global trusted traveler programs, the fact that we don't have differentiation from screening, it's ridiculous. It's until governments begin to wrap their heads around that, this is going to be a choke point for years and years to come, no matter what we do. We can biometric the hell out of everything we do. They're still going to be lined up for security until we see something different. CT scans, that's great, but you're still going to have to line up to go through it. You're still going to have random searches that are going to be part of it. And there's still going to be times when a government decides to, for good reasons sometimes, to start to ban things, or like the PED ban that we had, or something else might come up in the future. It needs to change. The whole concept of the way a security checkpoint is managed today needs to change. The conversations are there, and a lot of them are. TSA has actually been a bit progressive in this regard by doing a little bit more trusted traveler programs and starting. So it started, but we're nowhere near where we need to be in terms of being able to handle the volumes that we're facing in the next decade.
Let me put this then to our esteemed travellers then. Joanna, would you be happy to have that situation where you're not having to go through, where some people get extra screening, some people get less screening? Are you comfortable with something like that?
I've never thought about it. I had a screening sometime. It was a bit unpleasant to me, but I thought it was necessary for some reason, for safety, and I thought it should be so.
You thought it should be so. And Taras, for you as well, thank you, Joanna, for you as well, what do you feel about this kind of situation then?
Could you repeat the question?
Well, in terms of some, this kind of almost two-tier system of screening people, for the sake of speeding up some people's process through getting through, other people not so much. I just wonder if that kind of, what happens if you end up having like almost a two-tier flying system of traveler?
Yeah, it's not bad, but I want to be sure, as I told you before, that my data is used just for those purposes. Yeah. And if it is, and if the airlines could make me sure that it's used just for registration, then why not?
Okay. So, and just going back to your point about biometric passports and face recognition and all the rest of it, you're happy to give all your information to an app, but you're not happy with a chip passport. What's the difference? Because all that data is on your app, isn't it?
Yeah, but when I'm registering for the flight, I'm just entering my passport data in it, and then it just being checked in those border controls boxes. So right now I'm not given any like personal information. I know like the iPhone has the fingerprints and etc., but
yeah. But I think there is to be said on it that right now, and I think British Airways published that number, about 50% of the data people put in when they type in the information is wrong. And as airlines, we get fined providing the wrong information to government. So the first thing what we do is when we see somebody who typed in the information itself, we take your passport and we scan it. And that adds to the process. We either do it there or at the gate, wherever we see you first. We take your passport and scan it. Why? Because we get fined. So this is the kind of thing, so well, if you actually electronically scan your passport and we read the chip, we know the data is correct because we can read out the chip of the passports. It's not allowed in some countries like Germany where the privacy laws don't allow it, but it makes it so much more secure. But I think we haven't done a very good job as airlines to explain that the biometrics are not being used for the purposes he's afraid of. And we should do that it is purely used to be able to allow you to facilitate a one-off process through the airport, and by the end, we'll delete it.
We've got a question specifically for you, thank you, for Taras. A transferring journey with different airlines, are you more likely to download an airport app or an airline app or something else to be up to date? That's quite niche. So what kind of airport, airline, or?
For sure it should be the airline app. and some other app, for example, Skyscanner. But I'm traveling using the airlines, right? So they have the most the most concrete information about the flight details. So I'll choose the airline app and one more app to be sure right now.
Right, okay, so you're, unlike me, you're happy to have loads of apps on your phone, so that's good. Well, it's good to know. That's certainly a generational gap there. Wait times. One of the things that we were looking in the survey is wait times. Travelers' expectations about wait times are very, very high, and as Vicky touched upon, you get it down and people still want it to be even shorter. What, Janna, for you, when it comes to waiting, what are your frustrations, or are you relatively satisfied with how the travel experience is?
I think I can wait. That's not a problem for me. I think I always in the airport. I always need I always need support people to help, because the airport is too big space to manage on my own. And when I'm waiting, for example, it would be very nice if I could, for example, go shopping or somewhere. When I flew last year, I asked support people to go shopping with me, and they told me that they couldn't go with me. They couldn't accompany me to go shopping.
Wow, that is deeply frustrating. Thank you, Janna. So it's the experience, something that we've touched upon already regarding loyalty. For you, Taras, when it comes to waiting, are there moments where you think this is just unacceptable, whether it's bag collection, bag drop-off, the actual security checks?
My point of pain is the border control, because, for example, I'm not a European Union citizen, and I have to go through the border control all the time when I go back to my country and return to Poland. And almost every time I have the situation when I'm going to the shortest queue and just
It gets
and just look into the opposite queue, which is way longer, and I'm just continue watching on it and see that it becomes shorter and shorter and shorter, and I'm continue standing on the exactly same point where I've been 3 minutes ago. And I don't know, why just do not make such, for example, the ticket queuing systems, like you have the number and you see your number on some panels, and just you come, you show your passport and you go, and don't, like, you are waiting, but you know that you are treated as everybody.
As equal.
Yeah, equally.
Why can't you do that? Who go on, you wanted to...
No, I was just going to say, I think this ultimately, right, it could be the issue that the industry has to overcome, right, over the next, until, you know, as we're trying to add 8 billion people by 2038, right? You look at the North American stat, I'm a little biased of that, but you're adding over 500 million passengers. And so if we think about congestion and the system dynamics around that, and all the congestion, whether it be when I get to the airport and I got to go through security, or while I'm at the airport, or while I'm on the plane. We saw the video, and when I have to circle around 4 more times, right? If you think about the congested areas that, whether it be in Western Europe or in, you know, the New York City as an example, those are going to cause flight delays and irregular operations, right? And then we think about, well, you know, let's bring it up, right? You know, climate change the weather is impacting it, and that's going to impact irregular operations as well. All these things are going to cause more wait times. And I think, yeah, we can talk about a bag collection, we can talk about its security, but if we're going to add all these people into the system as it is today, how do we start tackling those bit by bit and making sure that we can knock those wait times off? Because people are only expecting, it's instant gratification all the time now. So I think it's one of the biggest things that the industry has to look at as a whole.
Shameless plug, but the next group will be Next, which is something we do conjointly with ACI, and that is meant to look at every single process in the passenger's journey and identify the things that we need to do to make it better, whether that's ADRM, ACDM, baggage collection. I mean, come on, like the airport's never been built properly to be able to do this in the first place. There's not enough ingestion points. We got people running around with GSE from one, like you talk about a carbon footprint, holy man. Like this, unless we change that, I mean, we're not building airports the way they're supposed to be. Like if you treat a bag like you treat mail, and mail through a facility, the way that's handled, like why do we have to manhandle bags? Like how did we get here? But there's no talk about that. I mean, the facility is a big challenge in terms of being able to make the bags move through the process quicker. And disassociating a passenger from their bag, good luck. We can send cargo in the trillions of dollars a year on its own without anybody attached to it. But heaven forbid you ever put someone on an airplane and disassociate them from their bag.
Yeah, let's get that slide back up, because that was quite a good one. That such a high percentage of people just refuse to be have that bag physically taken away from them. Taras, why is that? Why do you desperately need your hand luggage on? Why?
I'm traveling with my laptop all the time, with my documents inside my backpack. So I have almost everything there, and I can handle it by myself. Why just somebody should take it from me? So I think that's the main reason is that I need my essentials. So I'm using all the stuff from my backpack during the flight. So laptop, some maybe power banks, some to check any documents. So that's the main reason why I'm not giving it to somebody else.
So for an airline then, Vicky, is it easier? It's easier for you to get those bags off of the passengers? How? Because it just feels like this is such a pinch point, especially when people bring massive hand luggage things on. We saw them trying to fit it in the video into the top. They can't put it under the chair.
Yes, for sure. Hand luggage has been my hobby for the last 18 months to try to work on it, because also from a performance standpoint, it just takes a lot of time for people to board the plane. And then if the space is not sufficient, then to offload the luggage and put it in the belly. So we really try to look at it from a customer standpoint, also trying to find out why are they not giving their baggage up. And in the beginning, everyone thought it's because we make them pay for it if they have a light fare. But I really see this point here, and that's also what our conclusion was, that people don't want to wait for it at the baggage belt. So we tackled it in different directions for those passengers that already check in, that already have a luggage to check in, that we offer a free check-in for the hand luggage, because they have to wait at the baggage belt anyhow, and try to address people there. Also to enforce the rules that are there, but really to look from a customer standpoint, and also telling them it's how to stow it on board so it gets quicker, so we make best room or make best use of the room that is available on board.
So, and thank you. And Rob, how do you relay that information to customers that it's okay, you don't need to be attached? Yeah. Because you hear from Taras, he seems very, very adamant that all that stuff needs to go with him.
We seem in general on the shorter routes that is a fact. On the longer routes, most people just check in their bag and actually don't have too much problems, but then they still want to carry an enormous amount of hand luggage as well, because there's a lot of trading going on, and you only have to look at some other West Africa flights where bags come in by the containers. To be taken on the flight. So there we have problems. We offload quite often 80, 90 bags from one just at hand baggage. So we actually see that most people are actually willing to check in the bag, but because we have reasonable, generous baggage allowances, so from that perspective, the cost is not the issue. But we have an issue is that the wait time at the belt, which is unpredictable, and because we don't do small airplanes, if 250 bags come out, where's my bag out of the total? Now, we have the capability of notifying our customers through the app that the bag comes out. Unfortunate fact of life, that's only available in a few airports where the airport technology allows us to get that data. And we want to give a consistent customer experience. So we can do that in Dubai, but only 70% of our passengers don't fly into Dubai, they straight fly on. So it's very difficult to get that consistent experience around the world. And so from that, people in some airports, waiting time can be extremely long. And I agree, if I go home after a long flight, the last thing what I want when I come back from Poland on Friday is to actually wait at the baggage belt for a bag of dirty laundry. Because I have a whole home full of, the next day is fine.
Because, John, one bad experience and that's it. It just impacts the customer for a long time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it's interesting when we look at this, I start to ask why, right? So there's a few things. So, why don't I want to wait for my bag at arrival? Well, because the airline and the airport and everybody in the system can't consistently deliver it to me in an amount of time. If somebody could say, you always will have your bag 20 minutes upon arrival. It'll always be there waiting by the time you walk. Well, that starts to eliminate things. The other thing I look at when I look at this big yellow bag here is, why aren't there standard sizes of luggage? What, right? Like, why does a flight attendant have to go around and reshuffle the overhead bin all the time, right? And because things don't fit and people are bringing larger bags and all these things. So I think there's just some basic things that if we ask why and dig in a little bit more, we can start to understand the consumer intent and what they're thinking.
But it's at the heart of everything. We conditioned this behavior because at the beginning we weren't very good as an industry at handling bags. So theft, lost, damaged. The stats were 5, 6, even 10 years ago were astronomical. And so that's improved significantly, but the trust issue is still there. We can't deliver it consistently for all kinds of reasons. It's not because of effort, because I'm sure that you spend an inordinate amount of time in Frankfurt trying to figure this out as well as in Dubai. So that's inconsistent. We are charging for it. So we drove things into a cabin. The cabins are not designed for carry-on baggage to begin with. We tried to do a consistent bag size and nobody agreed with it as an industry. That was about 4, 5, 6 years ago. And it also actually drives the biggest challenge that was also on this list, which is boarding. There's a reason, one of the main reasons why people are queuing up to get on the airplane is to find a place to put their bag. So I'm waiting for an airline actually is going to say, you know what, no carry-on baggage. You'll be allowed a hand bag, which would be your laptop and your essentials. That's whatever that may be, diaper bag, makeup, whatever you need, but not a bag. And someone's going to do it. And when they do it, they're going to improve the process immediately. But they're going to have to fix those things on the other end in terms of being able to deliver it, and they need to be able to track it, and they need to be able to provide the customers with the information that they're asking for, which is also in this survey. So I know I sound like I'm crazy, but this stuff has been around for so long. It's frustrating that we're not getting at the heart of it, but it's not surprising that this is stats where they are.
But the conversation is there and you're talking, which is a good thing. A great question from the floor, which I'm going to put to Vicky. One major element of having satisfied customers is having on-time flights. What innovation is happening to improve in this area? We saw the guy circling around. Oh, you're on time, so we'll circle around for a few minutes. How do you make sure that they are on time?
I mean, as I mentioned, especially in Europe, flights were delayed last summer quite a bit, and the Lufthansa Group was also heavily affected, which then set off a whole program of measurements how to improve the performance. I think there were more than 300 initiatives on all areas, really looking at all processes, at all partners that contribute to a punctual flight, be it from crewing, from aircraft technique, but also passenger and baggage processes. And I think one thing is, especially that we need to work on even more in the coming years, is to make sure that our processes can be automated, can need less workforce, because we all know in the metropolitan areas that we are, it's hard to find staff that is skilled and speaks the right language and is up to the complexity that we have at an airport. When you look to the procedures, especially on the apron, it's more or less the same than 30 years ago. but you don't find the skilled people that want to work at the airport in 40 degrees in rain at 4 a.m. in the morning. And then a lot of the processes didn't work well last year because we have staff shortage, be it there or on the ATC side. So a lot of different things that you have to take into consideration and work on each of them. It's not a single bullet that you can use. I mean, for sure, aircraft utilization, how many buffers you plan into your system is easy, but it's also very costly. And we all know we don't have the margins just to put more aircrafts on standby. I think a small airline is the number of aircraft that we have on the ground just for disruptions, and that is not healthy on the long run. So you have to look at each of the areas, internal, external, and work on them.
What's your definition of on time? Just curious.
What's my definition of on time?
Yeah.
Well, if the plane is meant to, if the flight departure time is that time, I expect it.
Departure or arrival? What's more important?
Well, see, I do understand, but if the departure time...
I'm not supposed to be asking you questions, probably.
No, exactly. Hang on a minute, Nick. But if the departure time is such and such a time, Joanna, if you expect to arrive at a destination at a particular time and the flight says, we're only 10, 15 minutes late, that has a knock-on effect on everybody. And do you feel frustrated by that?
It may be the problem because when I arrive somewhere, usually someone is waiting for me, or, for example, if I come back home, I have to get to my home, and I have to, for example, take the bus. And if the flight was late, I would miss the bus, and that's maybe the problem. But I think 10-15 minutes, it's not a very big problem, but longer delays may be problematic.
It starts getting difficult, of course it does. And it's the knock-on effect as well. So, 10-15 minutes, it may seem, that's fine, but, actually, especially for people like Joanna who do have people that come then to meet or whatever arrangements they have, it does become a thing. But, Taras, I'm sure when you realize that your flight is somewhat delayed, you get frustrated.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit, but it depends on my final purpose. If I'm just know that I should come to Poland, to Warsaw, and I'm not in a hurry, so I can wait like 1-2 hours, it's all right. But when I'm waiting 3 and more hours, and I don't know how many hours should I wait more,
Yeah.
Will this flight happen at all?
Yeah.
Then that becomes a problem.
Yeah.
But like an hour, I can wait, like no problems. Happens.
For the airlines, what's your kind of the thing that you suddenly realize, this has now gone on for a little bit long, whether it's a flight, you spoke about the disruptions over the summer. When do you start getting worried and starting feeding information? Vicky first, and then we'll come to you.
We changed our notification policy to notify passengers automatically via SMS, email, whatever is available if the delay is more than 15 minutes. So in our eyes, starting with 15 minutes, we think it's valuable to contact the passenger. And maybe also when you talk about performance, when we started our program to improve performance, I think what was different to previous programs. Previously, we always looked at delays. So what is the reason for not being punctual, delays? And everyone in the airline community knows how you allocate delays. It's sometimes you use this code, sometimes you use that code. Mm-hmm. And this time, we really looked at data, at process data, really to know when did the process start, when did the process end, and which process can be at the same time. So the data availability also gives us new options in optimizing our processes and looking at everything. So that was something new to us, or to really see the value in the data that we have in our databases.
And Rob, for you, likewise, what?
We also said about 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
And I think it's also the key is that most of the delays we have, which are around 0 to half an hour, are actually happening when the passengers are already on board or really about to board. So telling them at that moment in life probably doesn't help that much. And one area which Nick also put down, one of the challenges we have, that probably on a daily basis we have quite a lot of flights where we have to offload the bag because the customer isn't showing up at the gate. If you can split that out, that instantly takes an enormous amount of things, because by mistake it's always happened to be that it is in the container which is loaded the furthest away from the door. You have to take 15 containers out, get that one back, and then load the whole stuff in again, and that's easily 15, 20 minutes.
And as long as we don't have that regulation in place to leave the bags on board, we looked at data to make a baggage profiling to predict which passenger will probably not make it. So we put the bags already on standby so we don't have to offload the bags, but then once the passenger goes through gate control and we know he's there, then we put the bags on board. And that already saves us 40%, no, 35% of our bags offload, because we predict which bags might need to be offloaded if the passenger doesn't show up. So that was also one of the initiatives to increase performance.
I think just personally as a passenger, having the information that to speed up the process, it would be helpful if you take your massive hand luggage, which I'm sure half the people that I see traveling doesn't fit into the guaranteed things. To make it quicker, please stick it in the hold is always helpful, because then I suddenly think, actually, maybe I should do that. Taras, we saw some of the surveys were about what a millennial, the kind of concerns that they have, and it kind of jarred with me, because I was expecting you to say, biometric, chip pin, passports, I want to just fly through, but you're concerned about that. When it came to things like Wi-Fi and stuff like that, are we really being patronizing by saying, oh, you just want to be uploading your, everything, that every second of the day that you're doing, you want to upload to all your friends, or is that just a complete misconception?
No, that's completely true. I just want to ask you, could you provide me with the Wi-Fi on the short destination airplanes, please? Because I know that in intercontinental airplanes has the Wi-Fi equipped. I haven't seen a lot of airplanes with the short destination have the Wi-Fi on board, but the flight time is the time which 100% of this time you could devote for yourself, and almost 90% of people are just sleeping or listening to music or playing the video games. But I have right now.
People do read books as well every now and again.
Yeah, for example, but for example, I have my small blog right in Instagram, and I just want to write some posts, upload some photos, some, I don't know, some new posts. My friend has an online shop, and he has new deals, and like we can say like 2 hours is off because of the flight, and you just can't access can't access the internet. And actually that's the time which I could even like call my mother for example, with whom I haven't talked for a week, for example,
That's no good. That's no good. Call your mother. So what's the kind of longest time that you can just about manage? What's your usual flight? Where do you normally fly?
That's the flight between the Kyiv and Warsaw.
Mm-hmm. And how long is that? Remind me.
1.5 hours.
And that is too long not to have Wi-Fi.
I mean, it would be better to.
You're laughing. I'm not laughing.
If you think about it, right?
It would be better to
the first generation that has been connected their entire life, right? And what's more isolating than going up to 36,000 feet and being disconnected? It's like the most isolating experience. And it doesn't need to be. It could be texting or listening to music or watching some content. Those are the things that make you feel more connected with your community and whoever you want to be. So it is I think critically important to this generation to have that connectivity because it is so inherent in who they are.
No, I'm honestly, it's just genuinely fascinating to find out, and it's important for you guys as an industry to also know how significant it is, if quite terrifying. 1.5 hours. Johanna, just for you as well, when it comes to the most helpful thing that the industry could do for you as a regular flyer, as somebody who travels a lot, what would you advise to them? What would you say, look, you know, I come across this all the time, please stop. You mentioned somebody trying to put you in a wheelchair, which is, I just think is outrageous. But is there something that you can just advise these guys while you got their ear?
For me, as a guide dog user, a very important thing would be to provide some relieving area for dogs when you change, for example, the airlines, and you have some break in your flight. That could be a nice thing to do. I personally, I've never flown such a long flight, but my friend told me this was the problem.
Joanna, thank you so much. That's something that I would never have thought about. And we have baby changing facilities, we've got religious rooms, we've got smoking areas in some airports, but of course, why would you not have a place where a guide dog who does such a fantastic job, and Bunya is absolutely extraordinary, to do something that they absolutely need to do. On that note, I'll let you guys reflect on that. I'll thank you all so much for your experiences, your expertise, and just for being here with me to talk about the future, and it's not looking too bad. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, and thank you for your questions as well.
All right, so thank you very much again, panel. Thank you, very insightful information. It's time for break, so coffee is served outside and also in the startup village, so please make sure to go and mingle with everyone. Thank you very much.
Sweet to know. The more I see you, the more I love you, but I'll have to